Well, everybody, I guess I'll sort of start rolling into my housekeeping that I do at the beginning of these calls. Um, so it is for me Eastern time. It's 12:30 p.m. Eastern time, and this is the time that we have a meeting every single week in Kids Comics Studio. But I think there's a lot of people here who are just Kids Comics Unite members and not members of Studio. So for those of you who aren't members of Studio, I thought I would give a really quick little explanation of what it is. And I like to use the Spinal Tap analogy that Kids Comics Studio is like Kids Comics Unite turned up to 11. So if you already like Kids Comics Unite as a community and you're looking for a little bit more, you might really enjoy Kids Comics Studio. And the other thing I will say, just to be perfectly transparent with all you guys, is that Kids Comics Studio is what keeps the lights on for Kids Comics Unite in general. It is a free community, but I pay for the software, the Mighty Networks that we run for the community. I pay for the email software, and I just found out that our prices are going up significantly next month. So yeah, there's money involved in keeping everything going. And so that's yet another reason, if you want to support Kids Comics Unite, consider Kids Comics Studio. I'm gonna really quickly share my screen so you guys who are not members of Studio can see a little bit of what it is. So this is what you're probably used to. This is the general feed inside of Kids Comics Unite. But if you are a member of Kids Comics Studio and you go right here, then it's a little bit of a different feed because you're going to be seeing some things that people have posted inside Studio, but not inside Kids Comics Unite in general. And in the events section, this is where you see what we are doing every single week live together on Zoom in Kids Comics Studio. So we have an accountability group every month. We have workshops with amazing creators like Chad Sala is the person who's going to be doing a presentation for us in August, and he is the author of The Cardboard Kingdom, which is a best-selling middle grade graphic novel. We do a live critique session every month. We also, there's Maple Lamb is coming to talk about outlines and synopses in September. We have something that's not posted yet for October. It's going to be about self-promotion, and another one about editing in November. Anyway, it goes on and on. So that's what we do that every single week. And then the other thing is we have a huge archive of past workshops that you can go to at any time to get useful information for your building your career or improving your work. So for instance, in craft, I'm just going to scroll through this a little bit. There's lots of stuff about coloring, about practice drawing comics every day, editorial process, isolating line art, script writing, self-editing, watercolor, webcomics, and lots of stuff about marketing and selling, like email marketing. This entrepreneurial mindset is one of my all-time favorites of our ever studio workshops. Library market, online book tour, websites, delegating, goal setting, book packaging, working with a literary agent, pitching, blah, 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 blah. So I think that gives you a really good sense of what we do in Kids Comics Studio. So I just welcome you to check it out if you're interested. Okay, over to our workshop today that is free for everybody in Kids Comics Unite. Roger, I'm so grateful to you for coming to us and asking if you could do this. So Roger McMullan, you self-published Cicadapocalypse. When was that?
Started April 22nd, Earth Day.
Okay, April of this year. And it has been an incredible ride. You've been posting some of what's been going on in the community. You got some incredible success, like with mentioning in the New York Times. I don't have a Times subscription, but I looked it up and it was paywalled. But I was like, there it is. There's Roger. I wish I could see it. But anyway, I know you're going to be telling us all about that. So I am now going to zip it up and turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jana. And again, if we were clapping, round of applause for Jana and her team, or Scrappy team. They seriously do an amazing job at keeping Kids Comics Unite afloat and offering just these amazing, like, community opportunities. And only been in here for about a year, but there's been lots and lots and lots that I've gleaned, I've learned along the way. And so really, really grateful for everything that they are doing. All right. Hooray. Well, thank you and welcome to this exciting adventure. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about marketing. Again, without ad spend, the Cicadapocalypse story. So just to give you a little bit of intro. Again, thank you, Kids Comics Unite and the amazing team there. They really are a great community, so definitely consider Studio, as Jana was talking about. And secondly, thank you for coming. Ta-da! It's awesome that you're here. Who am I? Just a quick introduction. I'm Roger McMullan. I'm a husband and father of 2 little cicada nymphs, 2 kids. I have a background in advertising, so that's what I majored in at university. And I do have a couple of years of agency experience. So that's just the advertising world. Since then, I've transitioned into a role as a user experience designer, which again, the similar skills of kind of appealing to the people that you're talking to. And so those, you'll see that kind of as a theme throughout here. Also an avid lover of nature, which is again, partially the cicada obsession, and obviously a huge fan of periodical cicadas. Manija mentioned she was on here, but I'm originally from Maryland, and that's where we met. And I'm living in Utah right now. So that's important because most of all the periodical cicadas are kind of more or less east of the Mississippi. And so I am outside of the periodical cicada zone. And so a lot of my marketing efforts had to be done digitally. And so keep that in mind as we move forward. Again, a little bit of context of my journey to self-publishing my own graphic novel. First, and for Brood 10, when the periodical cicadas came out in 2021, I wanted to create this graphic novel, Cicadapocalypse, but I had never done it. I actually, it was that spurred me going to join Kids Comics Unite, and because I had no idea what I was doing. And so it's been really helpful to, what I did instead is I only had about 3 months until the periodical cicadas came out. And so instead I made an activity book. It was a 24-page activity book. It had lots about the periodical cicadas. And what I did is I did a Kickstarter, and that gave me kind of confidence that one, of how to understand and self-publishing and crowdfunding and things like that. And then also gave me confidence that there is actually a market for this. So some people actually bought it, 121 backers and $2,700 raised for this activity book, but it helped me understand, like, okay, this is how you do it. And also what people actually want to buy cicada stuff. There's a bunch of cicada nerds out there. And so it was really nice to have these smaller bets as a kind of establishing background as I move forward into self-publishing a full 90-page graphic novel. All right, so just one more slide of context about the actual graphic novel. This is my first book. It's self-published. Again, I did have that small activity book, but this book is 90 pages. I consider it fictional nonfiction. It's a narrative about these 2 squirrels that encounter the Cicadapocalypse, the invasion of periodical cicadas that come out once every 17 years. The graphic novel, again, I have a full-time job. I'm a user experience designer. And so it took me 3 years to make. And in those 3 years, because I'm insane, I was thinking about all the advertising and marketing efforts that I was going to be doing. And so I had, in the end, like right now, I have this 31-page document of just like free-form thoughts and ideas, things I could be doing. And so definitely think ahead. That's going to be one of the things I highly encourage. I wanted this book to be released this year, 2024, because there's 2 broods of cicadas that came out, periodical cicadas. So kind of a important event that got a lot of people excited. And so I did end up hiring a colorist. I knew it would take me a lot of time to do all that. And so I did, illustrate and letter and everything and design everything in the book, except for the actual coloring and shading and all that good stuff. So ultimately, I started selling the book for $26.99 if you buy it directly from me. And then also $13 if you buy it wholesale, if you're a bookstore or something like that. I sold those wholesale books in packages of 12. just to kind of make sure that it was worth it for me to ship out to them. I also only sold them through my website. So this is kind of unusual in publishing, but I use Big Cartel. They offer you up to 5 items of free items that you can have on your site. And that was great. Part of that, the reason is that personally, I find Amazon to be the devil. And so I didn't want to encourage Amazon. And also, like, because I'm obsessive, I didn't want to have kind of that print on demand quality. So I also didn't use Ingram Spark or anything like that. So I went through a printer and printed 1,000 copies. You can see some of those books back there. So ultimately, why should you care? Who is this guy? Like, what's his deal? So here's my accolades, kind of. I was mentioned in 4 podcasts or videos, 7 articles or newsletters, 9 reels. I sold about 500 books and created a cicada community. I also got placement in 5 stores and 4 libraries. I did 2 school visits, a book tour, and on that book tour I had 3 book signing events. So lots of really cool stuff that did happen. I'll go through a little bit of that, but feel free to ask questions towards the end. You can spot our own Patrick Lugo here and Jenny Manis that I also met with. So marketing. Here's a little bit of context about marketing, why it's important, all that good stuff. Marketing and the money pit. We'll get into that. So recently, Jana posted here in Kids Comics Unite this awesome article about 10 awful truths about publishing, which I think is a really revelatory. I mean, a lot of these things I already knew to some extent, but having it by a publisher saying, like, here's the horrible truths that we face. It's like, wow, that's really helpful. And also the clickbaity 10, having it summarized into 10 points is really helpful. But one of them is most book marketing today is done by authors, not publishers. And so I've always had this kind of preconceived notion that, if you get traditionally published, they'll do most of the legwork, which the only aspect of that is true, I think, is that most libraries and bookstores, they do rely on a catalog, a massive catalog, usually from Ingram or Baker and Taylor, to kind of supply themselves with books. It's really hard to, as an indie author or illustrator, to get into a bookstore or a library. But for the most part, they aren't doing it. They aren't going to help you out. So Jana says, more and more traditionally published books are selling only a handful of copies. This means that traditional publishers, even in children's books, are looking for proof or some sort that the author or creator is going to help them sell the books. So you need to do the marketing. This is your job. It's really, really important that you are doing these things. And I would even argue, again, I think, it's really important for you to figure out what your goals are and what success looks like. But ultimately, financially, success looks like selling your books. And so marketing is arguably more important than the content or quality of your book in regards to the book's success in that regard. Obviously, I would not encourage you to put out a crappy book. We want quality books, and we highly encourage that. But I think that marketing is, again, arguably more important than the content or quality of your book. So focus, your focus should obviously be on both, but really make sure you have a marketing plan. Also, I know a lot of us fear marketing. Marketing is the devil. Marketing is horrible and a terrible experience. But I hope that some of this presentation will prove to you that marketing can be fun. It can be the fun part. And it can be, I like to reframe it as a community building experience. You're not just like hawking your book, annoying people. That's what ads are for. That's why people pay for ads. It's just basically blasting out your message over and over. And so as you community build, it can be fun. So here's the money pit. One last point, sorry. So yeah, define your goals, and then marketing also helps you fill the money pit. So the money pit I define as, you start off here above ground, and as you dig more and more things, the cost of fonts, ISBN, colorist, printing, editor, shipping supplies, swag, tour expenses, all these things add up, and you just keep digging. And eventually you're going to have to fill that money pit with actual funds. people buying your book. And so figure out like how many books you have to sell based on how deep you're going to dig this money pit, and also how deep can you dig your money pit. That's really important as you move forward, and make sure that it's possible to, if you are self-publishing especially, get back out. So on to the marketing aspect. I think the first step I would do is figure out what books are like yours. What are some comparative titles? For me, I kind of compared it to Peter and Ernesto. These are two sloths. They go on an adventure, and kind of throughout, there's facts that are kind of sprinkled throughout the story. I also compared it a little bit to these kind of science-themed books, and a little touch of paranormal activity from our friends at Gravity Falls. Technically not a book. But I compared my book to these, and the reason to kind of understand that is because the people who are buying these books that are like your book or in the same genre or field, it's really important to understand their mindset, where they're buying their books, how they're using the books, et cetera, et cetera. And so as you figure that out, you can figure out like where they've had success, who is talking about them. Is there a blogger who, you know, has written a glowing review of Peter and Ernesto? Maybe you can contact and reach out to them. What other authors would be talking about you, or bloggers or things like that? Are there influencers you can talk to, etc.? So additionally, like these are all amazing authors. Like you can reach out to Graham Anable, I don't know how you pronounce the last name. You can reach out to Rosemary Moscow or Andy Hirsch. These people have already done it. They're amazing. And so maybe you can even get a endorsement from them on your book. It's amazing, says Rosemary Moscow. That would be a great opportunity. So think about that. And that will also, again, kind of help you figure out your demographic. Who is it that's going to buy your book? So we all want to say, everyone should buy my book, or, you know, adults, parents, age range from 1 to 95 should buy my book. But the reality is that you really need to target that down to like, okay, my book is middle grade. My book is for like the language in it is that age level, or has themes in that are appropriate to that age. All those things are really important to kind of figure out who is it that's going to buy your book. So, and also one note, because this is kind of a kid, we're based on kids comics, keep in mind your book is the ultimate end reader is going to be kids, but it's going to be the parents who are going to be buying the book. So your marketing kind of has to straddle both worlds of like the parents of these kids. What would their kids, what would they like? So as you figure out one of the things you might want to ask yourself is, what is my core message, or what is my topic about? As you kind of figure out your core message, like mine, for example, is all about cicadas. I just love cicadas. I think they're awesome. But not everyone is going to have that luxury, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about that in a second. But once you kind of figure out the genre of people who are going to be buying your book, or the demographics, as marketing people like to say, that persona, there's also 3 other people who are going to be buying your book. One, I would say people who like you, so friends, family, etc. 2, people who like your work, so people who like subscribe to your social media, people who subscribe to your newsletter, things like that. And then 3rd is people who like your topic. And this is where most of the marketing comes in. So for me, again, all about cicadas. So people who, I would say, insect enthusiasts, educators, STEM, scouting groups, things like that, homeschool groups even. So all that kind of field, the educators, also the cicadas come out in specific geographic locations. And so I was able to kind of target even more of like, okay, I know they're coming out in the Chicago area. Let's really hammer down into like, okay, what are some schools in Chicago? What are some other whatever. So I was able to kind of target even more specifically based on those things. So let's get into the exciting part. Well, hopefully it's all been helpful, but the 17 marketing efforts that I made personally on the Cicadapocalypse journey. Before I get into that, dun dun dun, fair warning. My results may not be 100% replicable. Again, mine's all based kind of around this this event, the periodical cicadas emerge once every 17 years in specific regions. There's more details on that, but we won't get into that. But yeah, so it is based on a topic, and that might be a crutch, but it's also it can also be a benefit. I mean, in the book Guts by Raina Telgemeier, for example, she focuses a lot on like mental health and on digestive health. And so like those are two topics that she could go ahead and advertise out about those things. She finds a Facebook group about digestive health or whatever it is, like those are things that she can kind of focus on. Obviously she's doing well, so we don't have to worry about that. But so one, results may not be 100% replicable just because of that non-fictional tie-in, but find your non-fiction tie-in. And then also, I did have a little bit of difficulty kind of pinpointing financially fruitful efforts. In other words, it's hard to like, it's like I put out all these Instagrams. Did they result in sales? I didn't have like tracking to do that. So it's like, yes, maybe some of it. Some of it, it was more obvious, and I'll get into that as we go through these. But also, again, I've been thinking about this for 3 years. I started my actual advertising efforts 1 year out. But because of this time-based event, really the interest in the book and also the cicadas kind of swelled 3 to 6 months out. And so that's when people really, again, as you get closer and closer to this event, periodical cicadas emerging is when interest swelled. And then also, I would consider this whole thing pretty successful, but technically I'm not out of the money pit yet. I'm very, very close, but not 100% out of there. So onward, this is my crazy timeline of 17 efforts. Just to give you, I'll dig more into these in a second, but this is just the year timeline. So last year, May 2024, I started my marketing efforts. I had 2 crowdfunding efforts. So there was a crowdfunder one that everyone participated, or several people on KCU, Kids Comics Unite, participated in. And then I also hosted my own, this was like, I did a teaser, like the first 30 pages. And then I hosted the actual book on a Kickstarter a couple months later. And then in January, I was finishing off the book still. I started my marketing efforts before I finished the book. And then January, I finally sent it to the printer, this little blue mark. And then I got my books in end of April, or mid-April, and then started shipping them all out. And like basically kind of my marketing efforts had to they kind of petered out as much, more than I wanted them to, just because I was shipping books, ramping up for the tour, et cetera, et cetera. And then the cicadas actually emerged in May. So the book came out a little bit before the cicadas, and there was lots of pre-orders in between there. So moving on, So first, really quick, one more thing before I get into the 17 efforts. Up here in these 17 efforts, you'll see 3 things that are hopefully helpful to you. This indicates one of like when I was doing this effort in regards to the cicada emergence coming out. So this was a month before the cicada, or a year before the cicadas came out. I also indicated like how much effort did this actually require of myself, and then would I do it again? Was it worth it? And there's this little green bar that just says definitely, yes, no, etc. And so pay attention to those as we go through. Okay, so the first thing I did, 2024, I created a Facebook group. So I knew there was some interest in the periodical cicadas, so I made this Cicadas 2024. I knew that they were coming out, and there is a very passionate community of cicada nerds. And so this group grew and grew and grew to about 56,000. I ended up, it was just so much work to manage. I ended up closing it off into a private group because it was kept getting spam and all these other things. And so there was lots of hours I poured into this, monitoring this group for spam, and there was some infighting. Believe it or not, people are very passionate about cicadas, and so there was lots of interesting comments. And anyway, so we had to monitor this a lot. I probably could have made that easier. There's always things that I want to improve, but if I had figured out like someone else to help me monitor these things. But this group was awesome just because I was able to, you know, obviously I'm pouring in also like knowledge and things about the cicadas. it made me both a cicada expert and also, you know, promoting my book. But I only mentioned the book a couple of times, but every time I did, always resulted in sales. And so that was positive. I also had a couple of giveaways. You know, we reached a certain marker of X amount of number of members. I'm going to give away a book, or like, hey, contribute to this, or whatever it is. I also gave away several books to, I tried to give away 100 books to libraries and educational institutions. And so there was an application that I posted on here, and we got, I was able to mail those too. So again, this is really community-based. We really had a lot of passionate people talking about cicadas. And so this is a great place to obviously market the book. So again, I would definitely do this. Sold books almost every time I posted about it. So it's a great place. Obviously, when people are talking about cicadas, loving cicadas, they want a book about them too. Next up, this was surprisingly fruitful. So cold emails. It was a list. So I kept a huge list of people to contact or places to contact. And so I had like bookstores, I had zoos, I had museums, education centers, things like that. And I continued to compile this list again, or like I would think of like, oh, here's a influencer that I want to reach out to, or whatever it is. And I promise that if these people really are truly relevant, you know, if they are going to have, like, is the Brookfield Zoo going to have an exhibit about cicadas? If they are, then your book is a great thing for them to have. So some of my best opportunities actually came from these cold emails. Not necessarily just like read the cold emails. Sometimes it was like, oh, okay. For example, I reached out to the insect asylum and I was like, hey, this is awesome. Or like, I love cicadas. You probably do too. Here's some things about cicadas, blah, blah, blah. And this was in May 2023. So last, like, again, 12 months before. And the museum curator there, she was able to connect me to several other people that it resulted in me being in the Field Museum, which is kind of the Smithsonian of Chicago. And so, again, these cold calls, they may not be interested, and she actually was interested also, but then you might get also, you know, always ask like, hey, is there someone else that might be interested? Ask for those referrals. So again, I reached out like a year ahead. That was a little bit overly ambitious. Most people were not thinking about the cicadas, but they were insect asylum, but most people were not. And so I tried again 3 months later, or 3 months before the periodical cicada emergence. And these people were a lot more receptive at that time. And so sometimes it's just timing that's important. I think also one thing to just say is that make your opportunity if it doesn't exist. Again, that's kind of reflected in this Facebook group that we talked about a second ago. So make something up. If it doesn't exist already, make it. One of the things I also did with the insect asylum is I connected them with a artist in Baltimore, and he had done these gigantic 18-inch periodical cicada statues out of plaster of Paris, and connected him with the insect asylum, and they started doing that in Chicago instead of Baltimore. And so it was cool to see, again, connecting these communities. And so that, again, building the community was really important. As far as was it worth it? Yes, I would definitely say it was worth it. Sold lots of books to these big organizations, some museums, things like that. Again, through the connections that was just reaching out, cold emails. One thing I will note is like these bookstores and things like that, hundreds, thousands of people want to get into the bookstores and get into like these generic areas. You really need to find, again, that niche, that demographic. Who is it that's going to be interested in your book? So that at least for me proved more fruitful than just blasting general people. Find the specific thing. Next, this is an obvious one, but please talk to your friends and family. Worst that they can do is say no, or they can be like an amazing vocal advocate. This obviously sold a decent amount of books. It's friends and family. So, but my wife posted this adorable little what does it say? Roger had a baby. I can't believe our little Cicadapocalypse is finally here. 1 pound, 6 ounces. Not actually that heavy, but so, but from that, resulted in other sales too. So it's good. Please reach out to friends and family. Don't hesitate. Worst they can do is say no. Next up, I was really, 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 really excited about this. So there's lots of amazing artists. And these were some relevant artists that I love, 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 and I thought were really cool. So I was like, hey, for my Kickstarter, I'm gonna have this special cicada package where they can get art prints, cicada, like specially commissioned art prints of the periodical cicadas from these awesome people. And I wanted, this was baked into part of my marketing plan. Well, in that, like, I wanted to, there's not an endless supply, but there's a lot of really talented artists. But I wanted to find artists that were really talented and I love, but also had a good social media following. And so I can't remember what I capped it at, but I wanted them to have a decent, like, couple thousand following. And so I found these five artists, commissioned them to make unique prints specifically for this Kickstarter. Figured out a licensing agreement. We agreed on like 250 of these 5x7 prints. And I said, like, most of them said you can go ahead and continue to sell these after that. But the hope was that I could also not only, offer this super cool thing in Kickstarter, but also continue to sell these prints afterwards and have something unique and cool. That was exciting. And it was really cool. And I'm delighted that I did this. But financially, this was not the best idea. Artists cost money. As you know, we are, as fellow artists, commissioning 5 prints was maybe not financially wise. And so I didn't sell as many of these as I wanted to make it financially work. But again, it did bring a lot of delight and joy to the enthusiasts. And so I don't know that I would do this again just because of or if I did it again, I would have to really market this a lot harder or figure out a better way. But I did get some marketing. So like I would do like a collaborative post with Sydney Hansen or Ryan Berkeley or one of these other artists. And I did get lots of traction, especially from Sydney Hansen. It's still like probably my most liked ever on Instagram. And so there were rewards, but probably not as much as it could have been. So I would say ultimately probably not worth it. Did sell some books, but again, Instagram and things like that are kind of hard to track without codes and such. So next up, this was 10 or 8 months before the cicadas. I started a crowdfunder with Kids Comics Unite in July. I did the first 30 pages of Cicadapocalypse, raised a couple bucks for that. And again, that kind of helps me test the market. We had 29 contributors. If there are people who would be interested in it. A lot of these were fellow KCU members, so thanks. And then we also had in October around Halloween, I thought the book was kind of a little bit spooky. And so I tried to kind of emphasize it during Halloween. Also, it would give me some time to have everything else together. So I did a Kickstarter. Again, one of the biggest things about this, one of the benefits I did find with Kickstarter is they do send out newsletters or they send out emails, and they also have like their own homepage that kind of advertises different campaigns that are going on or relevant to you, etc. And so I did get a boost of about 24 to 33% of my actual like end backers were from Kickstarter, just originating new traffic to my campaign. And so that's not something I would have anticipated, but that was great to have. Both these crowdfunders kind of helped me establish a basis for a newsletter also. So I was able to kind of, after this, people who were, I knew that they were interested since they bought the book. So I was able to kind of continue to stay in contact through a newsletter. Again, with these, I had the kind of exclusive rewards, and the biggest thing with Kickstarter and crowdfunder is that it helps you make this a financially, it's less of a gamble financially. And so I was able to kind of sell books through that. Obviously, this is definitely worth it in that, you pre-sold books basically. And so, again, is there a market for this book? It also makes the cushion of your money pit a little bit less painful. Okay. Oops. Next up, I tried to pack as much quality and delight into the book as I could. So this is potentially its own money pit, but if you are wise, it can increase the shareability for others. So people want to share it on Instagram or on other platforms that, hey, look at this cool thing, or this was awesome. I'm excited to have received this, whatever it is. One thing I was hesitant to do in kind of my quality and delight, and just to clarify with quality and delight, so I had this spot gloss, I did hardcover, I had this little flip book inside the book. On all the packages that I sent out, I had this gigantic, massive stamp, da-da-da-da, it's this like 9x10 huge blah, blah, stamp. And so I tried to really pack in the quality and delight. I also included a bookmark, a bookmark and a sticker in each package that people got, as well as like a semi-personalized note that was printed. So it wasn't really, or not personalized, it was just a note about the book and thank you. But this, again, all these things brought me personally a lot of joy and pride. It's hard to measure if it actually sold more books, but again, I was happy I did it. So just be careful because, again, it can be a money pit. One thing I will note is that I tried not to, so my book is about these two squirrels and things like that, Faye and Cyrus. And I did avoid intentionally making swag or like little stickers and things about those characters, just because it's my first book. People don't know who I am. People don't know my characters. And they're mostly going to be buying this book because they're excited about cicadas. And so I wanted to promote the things that they already like. A lot of people are not going to care about your book, your world, your characters on your first book. Sorry, your characters or your world on your first book until after they've read it. And so they have to buy it to read it. So I, again, didn't focus on those things. All right. Next up, social media, the bane of all of our existences. I tried to post really somewhat regularly. As you can see, I do not have many followers. And I would say that generally, this did not boost my followers very much, if at all. And so it was not, I didn't measure it. I didn't keep track of those things, but it was not significant. I do feel like, though, like, especially if you don't have a newsletter, you need something that your people who are interested in your book or in you to be able to find. And so having a social media presence of some sort is valuable in that way. And also it, gives some channel that's immediate for people to kind of find out or see you or find out about you. As it heads up to Facebook on a lot of the groups, again, I encouraged lots of, I posted a lot on like other cicada groups and things like that, but many groups kind of ban self-promotion. And so you can't just post on any group that you find, or it'll just, be deleted. Another thing too that I really dislike about social media is that the algorithms are shrouded in mystery. And so you really have unpredictable results. Like one day I'll post and it'll get like 2 likes. And another day I'll post and it'll be like 300 people viewed your video. And it's like, what the crap is going on here? Like, what did I do wrong? And so, you try to figure out the algorithm, but just too much work and effort to really figure out. So I say maybe it was worth it. Really, it's just like, I feel obligated to do this because I don't have like a super regular newsletter, and I don't know, you need some kind of presence. So, and again, hard to track if it actually sold books. Okay, newsletter. I did do a newsletter. Like I said, I got a lot of contacts from my Kickstarters. my crowdfunding efforts, crowdfunder and Kickstarter, and most of the audience from that went straight into my newsletter. And it does build a direct community, a direct line to your audience, which is great. So you're emailing them directly. They obviously can ignore it. But I did end up with like 34 to 62 open rates. The industry is about 30, like, you know, those spams you get from Target or whoever it is. And then click-through rate of about 0.4 to 8%. And so that's decent. And I also was featured in a couple of other newsletters. So this is Sarah Giles, our own KCU member. And I also even reached out to my workplace. They have a weekly newsletter and said, hey, I'm F5, I work at F5. Can I include this in the newsletter? And they did. And so that was really awesome to have that there. And I did get a couple of sales from these things. So definitely worth it. Definitely host your own newsletter. Again, don't make it just about your stuff. Also talk about other things. I usually have some piece of inspiration, other books that I like, et cetera, et cetera. So newsletter is a great way to have a direct line to your customers, not customers, your community, and then they end up being customers. So definitely sold books from this. I also, as I printed my book, I made a small budget for bookmarks. So I tried to make my bookmarks cool. They are a cicada wing, and has all about my book on the back. I mailed these as, this is like the only thing that I kind of did pay advertising wise. Again, it wasn't an ad technically, it was more like free package of goodies. And I mailed them to bookstores and libraries. And so they at least would, be, even if they didn't buy a book, they at least had my materials that they were handing out. And then, the hope was that people would be like, oh, the people really want these bookmarks. Maybe I should actually stock the book. That didn't happen, but it was a good opportunity to kind of get other people looking at the book. I also, whenever I sent out a book shipment, I included a bunch of these bookmarks for them again to hand out. So easy marketing, again, kind of a sweet spot where like, hey, you're getting the book, get the bookmark, or if you can't buy the book, take a bookmark, etc. I think again, this custom shape instead of just the traditional like rectangle made it a little bit more interesting, but a lot of people would take these. It was also really easy to hand out, kind of a business card when I was on a book tour or anything else like that. Once again, it was kind of hard to say if these sold books, but I'd say probably. So I'm going to say it's worth it. Okay, this was an awesome, this was great. So this was activity sheets and website content. Basically, I had a bunch of these, like, here's a bunch of facts to use as kind of a coloring page. Had this like entomologist for a day worksheet about the cicadas. I had a bunch of coloring or comic templates that you can make your own cicada or other animal comic. Did these especially on classroom visits. I even had a toilet paper roll cicada craft that you could do. So I hosted all this on my own website, all about the cicadas. I had lots of content here about the cicadas, about my book, about how to draw. Well, I haven't done some of these things, but there's cicada memes, there's cicada costumes, cicada cupcakes, cicada 3D cicadas. Anyway, all these super nerdy cicada passion projects that I had here. I didn't finish all of them, heads up, but it did still prove useful. Again, I really, really tried to hammer out the activity pages at least, and also my book pages. So those two are 100% complete. And even if I didn't finish all my other overly ambitious projects about cicadas, but this was a great opportunity. The reason I thought it was great is because it was a less direct way to promote your book. So, on each of these pages, there's a URL about visit cicada for more content, visit cicadapocalypse.com. And people are, again, with the cicadas, people are looking for activities and things to do for the cicadas. So this also in Google search, people would look for like cicada activity or cicada worksheet or whatever it is. And that actually directed a lot of traffic to my website. And then they could also find Cicadapocalypse, the book. I even had some news station who found my book and wanted to talk to me because of just finding the activity sheets. And they had like a whole like thing about the cicadas. So pretty cool. It also, one of the things that I want to emphasize throughout this is that it elevates you to be more than an author. So this makes you an expert to some degree on cicadas. Obviously, I'm not an entomologist, but if you're able to position yourself as someone that other people want to seek out when they are talking about cicadas or about other topics related to cicadas, it's a great in. This also, having this content ready to also made for a great like in or opportunity to make school visits, things like that. I can be like, hey, I can say, hey, I already have these cool crafts. I'd love to do them in person with your classroom, or I'd love to talk about comics and Cicadapocalypse. Instead of just saying like, hey, I want to tell you about my book, you're offering other value, additional value. I don't know how much I sold books from this, but I suspect so. Again, definitely made some connections and opened doors for events and things like that. So would recommend. All right, press outreach. So this one is one that we all want, right? So I did some cold contacts again. One of the things that's tricky about press outreach is you have to tell people why your book is relevant, or why what you're trying to sell them or tell them is relevant. So with press outreach, I talk about like, hey, the cicadas are coming. I also made a book about them. I love them so much. Or like, hey, I'm coming out all the way from Utah to Chicago because the cicadas are so awesome. Oh, also, by the way, I'm selling a book. So let's talk. And so a lot of times that would result in that. Also, again, talking about going back to the Facebook page, that first effort, a lot of times the press would actually contact me because I was the admin of that group. So that's actually how the New York Times happened. Is the New York Times was like, hey, I'm writing an article about cicadas. You want to talk about them? And I was like, heck yeah, I do. And so they reached out to me actually. And so same with this Arizona article and actually this one too. So I did reach out to Cicada Mania and some other organizations. And there was also a lot of, there's definitely some other news stories that like I talked to them for a little while and then they just like dropped the story, went a different direction, whatever it is. That's totally fine. Just be prepared for disappointment if that's something that bothers you. There's plenty of that. One also thing that was great about having these articles is as soon as they're published, it's really easy to map the sales to these articles. So it's like, hey, this was published on April 9th. And like, sure enough, on April 9th, there's like 3 or 4 sales from Arizona. This is an Arizona Phoenix-based organization. Or like, hey, sure enough, from New York Times, there's 9 sales or whatever it is. So that was great. A very easy way to measure and track success. Also, yeah, I already mentioned that interest was sometimes fleeting. So one thing to, again, hit while the iron's hot. If you're going to be in the area, or if there's some like event that you're hosting or whatever it is, make sure that you talk to them, talk to press about that. For example, like, again, the cicada event, it happens more or less, people are excited April to June. And so you have like this small 3-month window. You want to be kind of a little bit before that saying, hey, come talk to me. And then before the opportunity is over. So plan ahead, especially with press. Yeah, and ultimately, yes, definitely worth it. Podcasts are similar to press outreach. I, again, keeping my list of people to contact, reached out to Bugs Need Heroes and a couple of other insect-related podcasts. Also had the pleasure of being on Patrick Lugo's hosted thing during the crowdfunding. And then he also connected me with Story Comic. And then Reading with Your Kids was another podcast I reached out to. So all these, there was some connection. And so, but again, this was awesome because It positions you as some kind of an expert to some degree. It's kind of localized to a very relevant audience, especially with Bugs Need Heroes. And then, yeah, again, very measurable. See, like, hey, this podcast was released, sold a bunch of books the next day or whatever it is. So pretty cool. Obviously, being a podcast is different than just other things, so it can be a little bit scary, but just make sure you have a decent-ish mic and prepare beforehand. Listen to the podcast that you are going to be on so that you know and are familiar with their style and everything else instead of just coming in winging it. So other thing I did was tangential social commenting. What the heck does that mean? So there would be on Facebook, some news organization or a different cicada group would post something and it'd be like, hey, my 5-year-old daughter has learned how to tell the gender between these two cicadas, but these are different species, right? And so she had a question about the species. I tried to answer it here. And so the answer is yes, by the way. They are 2 different subspecies of magic cicada. And so I gave them links and also shamelessly promoted my book. Hey, also, if you enjoy geeking out about cicadas, check out the 90-page educational graphic novel about Cicadapocalypse. Okay, so it's a great opportunity, very, very relevant. You know your demographic. These people love cicadas. They're talking about them. And do it. And so one of the things that was also, so what I would do to find these, obviously this one is my group, this screenshot, but I was also part of multiple other cicada groups that were not hosted by me. And I would also comment there. I would also search for relevant groups or articles or posts. So CBS posts a, like, the cicadas are coming. They have this horrible fungus, whatever it is, whatever they're posting. There's tons and tons of people who are commenting. Some of them will be like, I love the cicadas. They're amazing. And some people will be like, the cicadas are the devil. I hate their sound. It sounds like tinnitus. Whatever it is, you can post about, like, actually, cicadas are amazing. They're really a blessing to the ecosystem. Or you can post like, I love cicadas too. In fact, I love them so much, I made this book about them. And so whatever it is, that can be fruitful or not. I would say that I was successful in this. Usually about 1 in 15 comments. Again, these comments can be pretty copy and paste from each other to some degree. But I would say about 1 in 15, 1 in 10, somewhere around there, would result in a sale. So another thing I loved about this was, again, you can do this whenever you want. I would often allot like, okay, tonight I'm just going to be doing advertising. I'm going to set up part an hour. I'm going to do these searches for cicada articles and just post until the hour's up. And so it doesn't have to be super consistent. You don't have to be constantly monitoring your Facebook page. You can just sit down and do this for a little bit. So this definitely sold books, would recommend. Okay, we're getting close to the cicada emergence. A couple more. So again, we have 34 slides, so we're almost there. Thanks for staying tuned. So I also reached out to influencers. I sent packages to people who I was like, they talk about cicadas, they love cicadas. I'm going to send them a package. And so I do some internet research and find their address, send it off to them, or sometimes I directly reach out to them like, hey, would you be interested in this awesome book I made? And that said, I did not have like an agreement with them to like, hey, please, once you receive this book, you will post and talk about my book and how awesome it is. And as a result, like almost nobody talked about it. And so even though I made these cool packages and they even had Utah chocolate, come on, they didn't cover it. The exception is Rosemary Moscow. I reached out to her and she was like, hey, yeah, I'll share your story. And so she shared on Instagram a story about it. And again, what was more fruitful was these partnerships where, I commissioned an artist and said, hey, there's several pictures in this series. We did like a collaborative post. And again, she has a much larger following than I do, 801. So that's like the most I've ever had. Usually my posts get like 20 people. So these partnerships with artists was better, at least for eyeballs. I don't know how they actually resulted in sales or not. So influencers, I probably would not do again. I'm saying maybe as like, I would probably do it differently if I did do it again. Oh man, I was excited about this, the treasure hunt. So I had in these backers for Kickstarter, I had like these hidden clues and different things that I was like, this is gonna be awesome. People are gonna love hunting for these Cicadapocalypse books. And I thought it was a really fun way to get engagement and people talking about the book. I posted on Instagram, I had it on my website, and nobody cared. So like I didn't have the following to do this. And so it received like very, very minimal traction. Also, the prize, it was my book and this like bronze cicada and some bookmarks and stickers and stuff. I don't know if that prize was too small enough that people didn't care, or what, but it did not sell books to my knowledge. And again, it just need a bigger following for people to care about this. So, all right, the second to last one, I think. Let's see. Yeah, second to last. This was the best part of my life. No, not of my life, but this is the fun part. So definitely the best part of Cicadapocalypse is the book tour and school visits. So you go into schools, you have a presentation prepared, you bring your book. I donated to the school, but it's just super fun to go inside the classroom. The kids are like so full of energy. It's just so fulfilling to kind of give these presentations, hear them all erupt into oh, when they see this cicada emerging from their shell. And it's a great opportunity, obviously, to market yourself to, again, providing extra value beyond just an author and illustrator. You give out marketing materials, blah, blah, blah. I will say on the book tour, so I went to Chicago. We used to actually live in Chicago, and I went to a couple different places. You can see here. But long story short, like I went to 3 different book signing, or I hosted 3 different book signings, and those book signings were places I had already sold like a bunch of books. So like I went to the Martin Arboretum, or I went to I guess I didn't do a book signing there, but I went to the Field Museum, for example, and I already sold them like 48 books. And so basically at their place, I'm selling the books that I already sold. So it's like I'm selling their books. Like I'm not going to sell books from myself at their place. And so financially, it wasn't lucrative for me. But again, just the absolute fulfillment, the community building, and awesome experience of just being, again, this is what you've worked for, right? Like you've been, at least for me, it was like been 3 years in the hole drawing in the dark, or not dark, after my kids go to bed. And it's like, now it's like, oh, this is why I did that. And it's just really fulfilling to see and experience for yourself. So would highly recommend. It did also result in some restocks, like 1 or 2 organizations like, hey, we need more, we ran out of books. So that was cool. But again, for the most part, like no kids bought my book, and maybe I just need to do that differently. But either way, definitely worth it. Super fun. Last one is libraries and bookstores love red tape and gatekeeping. No, there's definitely a order and a process to how they buy books and acquire books for their catalog. So most of them use vendor programs like Baker and Taylor and Ingram. And so they have these big, massive catalogs they only buy from, and they can't buy just the way their process is. They cannot buy self-published books or local authors unless there's a ridiculous demand. And so to kind of get around that, what I did is just I'd walk in and be like, hey, I'm an author and illustrator, and I hear the cicadas outside. Would you like a book? So this is at a library. These 2 librarians were ecstatic to geek out about cicadas with me and to take some books. But I also went to another library and I was like, hey, I'm an author illustrator. I have this awesome book. They're like, okay, cool, thanks. I'll put it through the bureaucratic process. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'll leave it here with you. And so it really just depends, but I still thought this was a fruitful thing. I also sold another book, just walking into a comic book store and was like, hey, would you like this book? So I would recommend this, but not as emphatically as other efforts. So to recap, here it is. So here's all the efforts that I made. Again, if it was worth it, the amount of effort required. The ones in bold are the ones that you may not have thought of that I would highly recommend. creating a Facebook group, cold emails, crowdfunder or Kickstarter, newsletter, activity sheets, and website content, press outreach, podcast, tangential social commenting, and a book tour or school visits. So highly recommend those. And if you want to re-explore those, we can. Here's that timeline again, just a refresher. But ultimately, you can do it. Find your people, find the demographic, the people who would be interested in your book, find a way to market it to them that's authentic to you. Again, these are all things that worked for me, things I had been thinking about for 3 years, and tried to throw in as much creativity as I can. And I know you can. Again, if you're an author or illustrator, you are creative. And so just be creative in your marketing and in reaching out to that community, your people. And please, again, do it before your book comes out. Be thinking ahead. And as you do all these things, you will sell your book. So thank you. Any questions?
And Patrick has his hand raised.
Great presentation, Roger. And thank you for the multiple shout outs. But my first question, I have 2 questions. My first question is, how did you measure effort on that blue bar? Like, what does 100% effort look like versus 50% effort?
That's a great question. And it's kind of subjective. So I just kind of was like, in relation to other things, there wasn't any like hard measurements. I was just like, it's more like, when I think of how much effort this was this painful or not painful? And so the more painful ones are full capacity and less painful ones are low capacity. Like, for example, the low capacity one was like friends and family. And it's like, all I have to do is, I have all their emails. I send out a list, or I send out an email. It's like, please buy my book. Here it is. Whereas like full capacity or higher capacity was like the Facebook page and where I had to like constantly be monitoring this thing. Is 56,000, had to be on there every day, had to like occasionally post content, et cetera, et cetera. So there's more effort there.
Well, that leads into my second question, exactly, because I want to know, like, what did you do to maintain that Facebook group in terms of content? Like how did you, like, what kind of content and at what rate did you deliver it to kind of keep people from going to another cicada group?
Yeah, and there were other cicada groups, and I kind of not partnered. I was friends with them. So like there was multiple groups, and there even was a faction group where like my group was like, hey, everyone can join. People who hate cicadas, people who love cicadas, and like there was a little faction group who was like, hey, what? People can hate cicadas on this group? I'm gonna make a cicada lovers group, and so it's only cicada lovers in their group, and it was like, I want to appeal to everyone and help them, convert to the cicadas and how great, awesome they are. And so like, I'm paraphrasing, but yeah, so I didn't try to like maintain people. I was commenting in all groups and other groups too, like, hey, entomology is about insects and things like that. So I would comment, I embraced all of them. I didn't have to curate much except for the spam and stuff like that. Because there, again, lots of passionate cicada nerds. And so people are constantly posting stuff. And so I didn't have to post very much. There were, obviously I would occasionally, and especially like when it got out of hand, just people being crazy, I'd be like, okay, like let's find some love or you'll be banned from this group. And so finding common ground was probably the harder part sometimes. Does that answer your questions? Yeah.
It does. It gives me lots of food for thought. So thanks and congrats again.
Thanks. Good luck.
Yay.
Manisha.
Okay, Manisha, and then after Manisha, Lauren.
Thank you. Hi, Roger. I'm like so proud of you. It's so amazing. So I do have a children's book series. I have 2 books out so far, and I self-published through Amazon. I order authors' copies and like resell through my site, all that good stuff. But as you already mentioned, Amazon is like, So I'm interested in your process of how did it work with like going through a printing company or like through a printer. I think you said that was your process. So I'm interested to learn about that and what you did with that.
Yeah, that's might be another discussion, but there's a long process. But yeah, I mean, I think if you can find a printer, you kind of have to figure out again the financially like because the printer will give you an estimate, and you have to usually buy to make it worth it to some degree. You have to buy larger, there's like a 500 threshold, there's 1,000 threshold, and it doesn't get too much cheaper after that. But the less books you like, that is one benefit to print on demand, right? Is that you can control more, or that it's like you can sell one copy or you can sell 1,000, it doesn't matter. And so you do have to kind of figure out and make sure there is a market for it. That would be my biggest caution. I can connect with you later though about more of the publishing, the actual process of finding a printer and all that stuff, because that's a longer discussion.
And I do have one short question, distribution. So I noticed you said with the bookmarks, right? Like, I'd love that idea. You said that you didn't necessarily get a lot of return, like book sales from it, but you did deem it as worth it. So I just wanted to know, like, where did you find it worth it to use that marketing tool?
Yeah, so again, I was able to use it as like something I send out to other people. So I thought it was useful in that way. It's like, again, with an event, with the cicada emergence, having like cicada wings that people can kind of use as a keepsake. It was nice to have. So in that regard, it was worth it. It was also worth it, like, as I do a book tour, it's like I can just hand these out to people. If you have a stand, I know you have like a entrepreneurial efforts. And so you can hand those out easily, just like, hey, take some of these. And bookmarks are pretty cheap, I think like 10 to 50 cents, depending on your printer and stuff. And so those are a great, basically, business card. So I would say it's definitely worth it in that regard, and gives a little bit more about your book than whatever. Someone else is mentioning here in the chat, and I think it's a great idea. If you place a QR code on your bookmark, there is a way to actually track that. I didn't think through that beforehand, which was fault on my part. But if you have like a QR code with a specific link that tracks like basically it's like bookmark dot, your link dot whatever, then you can easily track like, hey, someone scanned this QR code and went to my site. This is a sale from the bookmark. So you could track that better than I did, obviously.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right,
Cool.
Lauren.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Roger. Thank you so much for doing this amazing presentation. I'm super excited about this very valuable knowledge. My question is about vectors. In terms of email, in person, via social media, how did you find that you got people to respond to you the best? Like, what did people seem to like, and did it matter if they were, in a bookstore or, the general public?
Sorry, so the question is about backers, you said?
Vectors. Sorry, my computer's really terrible. Like, in terms of reaching out to people via email, or reaching out to them in person, or getting into social media messaging, what did you find you got the most responses to?
I mean, if you have a newsletter, that's gonna obviously, like, people are, again, this is your audience, your people, and so that was helpful. That's what I kind of preface this with, is like, it's kind of hard to tell exactly which one was the most fruitful, and so you kind of have to scatter blast all of them to some degree. But I think especially the Cicada 2024 group was most helpful for me, at least, just because it's like, here's the topic, this book covers this topic, this is the people who want to talk about that topic, and so that was very fruitful for me. Again, obviously the Kickstarter and crowdfunder, the people who are also already buying the book are also going to be advocates for the book. So hopefully that's helpful.
No, very helpful. Thank you. Awesome answer.
Yep. Thank you.
All right.
Yep.
Jeff, and then after Jeff, Melissa.
Hey, Roger, a really impressive product and presentation. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
You mentioned that you did some of the marketing before you had finished the creative work. So I'm just wondering how you managed your time. Did you learn things about time management?
That's probably also another presentation.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But
if it's a short answer, or
yeah, the short answer is like I was far enough along with the book that's like I already had a couple of splash pages that I could share, like your proof of concept. Here's what's coming, and I kind of timelined those all out. I definitely had lots of insane like drawing lines from this to this, and like some kind of schedule of like things I wanted to talk about or do or release at different points in the journey. And so definitely had that. Sorry, your question is more about time management, right? So doing both in tandem. So yeah, I think, and then I also had like, meanwhile, the goal was like, okay, I need to release, one for the colorist. I need to finish inking this page about 5 pages a week. And so I was doing that 5 pages a week. And then also like, that gets tedious also. And so it's like the marketing kind of helped break it up. So I had, another, maybe I'd crank out 2 a night, and then I'd work on the marketing. So I'd have kind of 2 tandem goals of like, okay, 5 pages inked a week. And then also I want to finish whatever Kickstarter effort, or I just had to prioritize like, okay, the Kickstarter is launching tomorrow. I really need to do that and bail on the other things and make it up for it. So it's just always a balance. But having those set goals and that kind of a timeline, it really helps.
Cool. Thanks so much. That's awesome.
Yeah. Melissa.
So I love that you're kind of a chart geek. I am too. I love charting and keeping track of things. Not that I use it very much, but I was interested in your cold walk-ins. Do you just walk into a place, or did you make appointments in advance?
No, I only do this like 3 or 4 times. But yeah, and again, because I don't live in the Cicada area, it was kind of like a impromptu, like, hey, I have time, let me just do this. And so there's one library I really wanted to visit because I used to live near there. And so I walked into there and just I just talked to the librarian that was on staff. And actually most of these places I had already reached out to and they just like, it's like ghosted. So I already like sent out bookmarks, or I had emailed them and they had never responded. So I was like, okay, well, I'll just walk in then. And so they already had like some kind of inkling. So it wasn't fully cold, but so the Elmhurst Library, I walked in there and just said, hey, they were, again, she was like, like there's a process for this. And so I was like, okay, that's fine. So I just stashed bookmarks everywhere throughout their library. And then I walked into the comic shop that was near there. And I had also already mailed them bookmarks. And he's like, hey, yeah, I recognize the bookmarks. I'm sure I'll buy a copy. How much is it? And so he just like went over to the closet and bought his own personal copy, basically. And then the last one was the library, and I walked in and they immediately greeted me like, hey, we yeah, how can we help you? It's like, well, I'm an author. I have this book about cicadas. They're awesome. Would you like one? And so just gave it to them. So those are like my very minimal cold walk-ins. I will say with like some bookstores too, if you are a local author, they will support you much better than if you are like I don't live in Chicago, so it's like hard. I can't just be like, hi, I'm a local author, please stock my book. And like here, people aren't as interested, but I should try. Yeah, does that help?
It does. And if I could follow up with that, we see book bundles all the time. Have you thought about getting together with other like topic authors, whether within the graphic novel or other format, and getting together and bundling yourselves as a group to approach an organization like a science center?
Yeah, that's a great idea. I have not thought of that, but I know of at least like 3 other authors that I could definitely like, hey, here's the cicada package, the ultimate cicada package. Like, let's do this.
Or even not just within cicadas, but other insect and arachnid type topics.
Yeah, or like a STEM package or whatever it is. Well,
STEM, right? My daughter is a teacher at the Da Vinci Science Center in Allentown, Pennsylvania. And STEM has of course, STEM has changed to STEAM.
Right.
Science, technology, arts, math. Yeah. And now they've added the R for reading. So marketing the book as a reading particularly for non-traditional readers might be a plug for you. Yeah, that's a great idea. There's a cicada emergence next year, so I'll have to put this into my marketing plan. So put it in there. Thanks so much for a great presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Melissa. Hatchling DM. I don't know what your actual name is, but
Hi there. Thanks, Roger, for the talk. Have you talked, or I don't know if you talked about conventions and appearances at conventions? Is this something that you apply for and attend?
great question. I thought about that, especially like a Comic-Con type of thing in a cicada area. And I seriously considered it, but I think the biggest thing for me is just like financially would not be worth it because I'm not in the area. Like if I was in the area, I would definitely do it. Like I've even considered here in Salt Lake doing a cicada convention or a comic convention, but I just don't know that there would be the sales to justify it. But if I was living in a cicada area, I would definitely do like C2E2, the Chicago version of Comic-Con. So, but yeah, it really just depends because like a booth costs money. That's usually somewhat affordable. You can, it's like $300 or something. And then it's like, okay, well, but then like for me, it'd be like the air travel and the table, and then also a hotel and all this other stuff. So it's like, I don't know if I can make, $1,000 off of book sales. So, but again, it's like community building. So it's like a trade-off. I don't know. So, but considered, but not done yet. So great question.
Thank you.
Well, just to follow up on what Hatchling said, not just comics conventions, but children's book festivals, and also like library and educator conferences, because a lot of those big national organizations like ALA and NCTE, and they have their local like state by state chapters, and each of those states has their own state conference.
Yeah.
And so maybe like in Utah, you could do the Utah State Library Conference or something like that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So yeah, bake it into the plan.
All right. Wow, Roger, this was so phenomenal. Thank you, everybody. Those of you who were able to stay to the very end. I think we have your link in the chat somewhere. I'm scrolling up.
Yeah, I can.
Roger, maybe you can put that link in the chat one more time. Yay. Okay. So I always like to end this with everybody unmuting and saying thank you to Roger for sharing his whole experience. Roger, it was absolutely amazing. Thank
Thanks.
you so much. I think probably people got a lot of food for thought.
Hopefully. So thanks again. Thanks for coming.